Okay, hello. My name is Rebecca Ibel with Contemporary Art Matters. In conjunction with our current exhibition, Sculpture One, I am delighted to sit today via Zoom with Pamela Fraser, an artist in the exhibition, who we have a selection of incredible ceramic works. The show is sculpture, but the painterly interests of mine are not lost in her works. So I'm delighted to welcome Pamela and talk about their works. I do want to say I first met Pamela in Columbus. Our gallery is here, and she was a professor at The Ohio State University. And we reconnected in a very contemporary way with Instagram. And so this is the first time I think I've laid eyes on you physically since we were in the same space together. We've only communicated from online and on the phone. So it's nice
Exactly.
to see you.
Yes. It's nice to see you, and thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. So when we met originally many years ago, you were an abstract painter. I remember a really fabulous watermelon slice painting, and but very minimal and maybe more intuitive. And since that time, the journey you've taken, moving away from Columbus and teaching, and you've written a book, published a book on art theory. You've made new botanical paintings and this whole new stream of sculptures, little ceramic bonbons.
To me, the change in my work really came around 2016, 17, from this very, very restrained and sparse kind of aesthetic. I think that work was actually less intuitive than my work is now and more kind of intellectual and based on a dialogue with conceptual and minimal art. I felt sort of like that I was on a dead end with the work for a little while, but I wasn't sure where to go next. I mean, this happens to artists where you reach the end of something, and a lot of times it's great because you know something else comes to you. But when it doesn't, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so that's actually the opportunity, the moment that I took to say, well, I have these other interests in writing, so I'm going to pursue these writing projects. So I did that for a couple of years, and in the whole time I was kind of percolating about my own visual work. And when I was ready to return to it, I really went through, a big change. I think the biggest change is that the work was so maximal rather than minimal. I mean,
Yes.
I had always really valued this sort of quietness of my prior work, and all of a sudden I wanted to make work that was really loud. I can't really account for that on a personal or intellectual level at all. I'm not sure what changed, but that's what I wanted to do. And and the image part of the work kind of took over from any kind of abstraction. I mean, they're still abstract in the sense that they're flat and graphic, and they're not entirely, like they're not naturalistic. But yeah, they just kind of came out of feeling like life is moving on, and this is something I wanted to explore. And frankly, it was a little scary to change so much because I kind of had an identity with the earlier, more sparse work. And I was like, what are people going to think when I come out with this crazy new loud-mouthed work?
People don't like change. It's hard for it. But it's grand. It's just fabulous to see.
Yeah, people don't like change, and I was aware of that. But sometimes when you feel convicted about something that you're making, that you want to make, that you feel is valuable and exciting, like you just can't keep it in. So finally, I came out with my new work, and the response to it was really fantastic. So I think it was such a big change that I'm sure some people didn't like it, but got lots of positive response. And then at the same time, I started working with ceramics, and that has become a real focus of my work now too. And I see the abstraction in my paintings, my previous paintings, in those vessels. I mean, they really are three-dimensional paintings. That's how I think about them.
I see that. I see that. And I think from all of your work from the beginning on, there's been a combination of intellectual pursuit with concepts of beauty. But what I see now is joy. Like there's exuberance and,
Yeah.
passion and unabashed sort of pleasure.
Yeah, I think that's totally, I love that you said that because that's what I'm trying to do. I really want both the paintings and the sculptures to encapsulate joy. I mean, that's a goal of mine that I've actually written down before. And with the sculptures in particular, I want them to be these like objects to marvel at. There's a lot of failure in them. I make a lot of them and they don't make me marvel at them, so I put them in the trash. They have to do something with the color and the pattern that is surprising. And with the glazes, it's like magic. Things sometimes happen with the chemistry of it that you really don't predict. And that's always so fantastic when that happens. But they really are, both these bodies of work are motivated by that desire to create something really just a special object.
Oh, I love that. So one of the things I see in ceramics, there are a couple things. One is ceramics having a boom today. I think there are a lot of painters who are coming to ceramics. I love the joy in the glazes and that sort of Dada-esque what's going to happen after they're fired. But also, I've heard this, and as a professor, maybe it's true or not, that in studying sculpture today or over the last couple decades, it's such a conceptual pursuit. There's less physical sculpting with the hands, and ceramic brings that back to that
Yeah.
physical component, and maybe that's another contributing factor of why ceramics are so exciting today.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, there's still plenty of work out there that's going on that is like based on de-skilling. So it's not like that's gone, but I think there is a hunger for more tactile experiences, both for artists making things and also viewers being able to see that, that something was handmade and something is unique. Yeah, I think that people have a hunger for that, an interest in that.
And the scale itself, these little objects are little jewels. For so long, everything is big and massive, and to get noticed, you have to make gigantic things. And these are just like little delightful, pleasurable, private treats, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the scale that I'm working in with them. I mean, I could go bigger, and a few people have asked me, "Are you gonna go bigger?" Because the kilns are bigger. But I really kind of like how precious they are at that scale. I keep in mind, ages ago, I don't really have sketchbooks anymore, but for like a long time, I always had a sketchbook, and I have the whole archive of them. And maybe 15 years ago, I wrote this little sentence in a sketchbook, something to the effect of like, big effort for small little effect. And the vessels that I'm making, like that just occurred to me at that time that that would be a kind of cool thing to do, something super elaborate just for one little thing. And I see these vessels that I'm making as the like manifestation of that, because a lot of times I'll make the neck really small so it can actually only fit one flower. And I just love that idea that it's just like this really elaborate thing just to fit one single flower.
So you do sort of envision these as sort of utilitarian vessels as well.
Yeah, I didn't start out that way. I totally saw them. I didn't think about flowers being in them. And then over time, I mean, I make a lot of them, so they're all over my house. And I started picking flowers outside, and I love them with the flowers. So that became a part of how I conceptualize them. I've been working on one that's really like shows how much having the flower in it is a part of the concept, because the vessel will have, or vessels, a whole bunch of holes in them. But I love the idea that from a distance, it will look like, wait, this vase has holes in it. How is that possible? But on the inside, there's like an interior chamber where the stem can go and the water can go. I definitely envision them to be used as utilitarian vases if people want them to be, but they're also sculptures, they're artworks.
They are, and I love that your energy combines sort of these high conceptual intellectual pursuits on art theory, and as well as mixing that with, handmade crafted vases and vessels for flowers, for, very craft, high and low art mixing together.
Yeah, I mean, I think of myself I more along the lines of like a designer in recent years with both of these bodies of work. I mean, the paintings are like crazy designs. They're like, I literally sometimes start them to try to be really like controlled and make them almost like a design, but I never can do it because I get bored and I'm like, no, it's got to go crazy and it's got to be nonsensical. I love design, and I think they really come from textile, like looking at textile patterns. Obviously the vessels are a design object in some way too, so I think a lot about design.
Do you go back and forth from painting to sculpture?
I do tend to do that. I mean, I always have both going at the same time, but then I tend to put my focus not as a plan, it just kind of keeps happening that way, where once I get into making a few vessels, then the paintings are sitting, nothing's happening with them, and vice versa.
Paintings represent an interest in design and maybe William Morris or some of those early 20th century fabrics and so on. I also see like nature. You've moved to the Northeast. Does the outdoors come inside at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So the paintings originally were inspired by a couple of things. I went to Sweden, to Stockholm, and there was a Josef Frank retrospective going on at the museum there. I was not familiar with this work, and they're really like very exuberant botanical images, wallpapers. It was so beautiful and so inventive, and I was just so taken with it. I was blown away, and I don't usually get inspired so directly, but I really was, and I came home with the idea that I would create a catalog of all of the different types of plants in my yard. But this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I start off with a very logical, concrete idea, but then I just can't keep to it. So I started doing it, but then I very quickly kind of brought the visual interest in Josef Frank back to my mind. And rather than making a strict catalog, I liked the idea where I would create different sort of plant and flower motifs, but use them as a vehicle for visual invention and pattern and color combinations. And so that the paintings really just became paintings.
Yes.
Being in Vermont, I live in a very rural place. I take walks in the woods and all the time. It's just a part of my life, and kind of appreciating and admiring nature is a part of my everyday life. So I think it totally would not have entered my work if I didn't live here.
There are a number of artists who have gone from creating entire homes, architecture, and the entire design, interiors. From There's maybe a resurgence of that, and I don't know if it's the artisanal taste that we have for the homemade, but there's a freedom to cross in and out of different lines.
Yeah, there is. And I would love to do some things like that. I mean, it's hard to find, there's only so many hours in the day. But I've toyed around a little bit with the idea of designing some wallpapers and things like that, kind of bringing it back to what Josef Frank, who was my inspiration, what he was really doing with this kind of imagery. And then I really love the idea of hanging my paintings on some of my wallpaper.
I see rooms happening. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
and then also I'm playing with the idea, I'm just starting this, of trying to make a little specific interaction of motifs and patterns within the sculptural objects and the painted objects. So for instance, a pattern that I use in the background of one of the paintings might be a pattern that I use in one of the vessels.
I love that. There are some other painters that I know who are making ceramics. Michael Reeve Snyder's made some wild ceramics. They're like his action paintings. They're little action sculptures. There's something maybe about the material that works so well.
A lot of painters I know, like I love Joanne Greenbaum's
Yes.
ceramics. Gorgeous. And they're
And Mary Heilman does some really beautiful
yeah, yeah.
objects, painted objects. I don't know that I've seen her ceramics, but
I think that a lot of painters seem to use ceramics in a very immediate way, and I don't do that. There's a skill involved. It's really all about timing. So it took me a long time to be able to do that. And sometimes I wish, like, yeah, why am I not just like sitting down and like making something, just smush it together and make it work? I could make a lot more stuff, but I just love those shapes.
that's, I think, the success of great things is you don't see that as a viewer. They seem very like they were done with ease. Like, well, of course, they're just
Yeah.
perfect and float.
That's why you throw away a lot of things.
I see. Right. Well, this has been such a joy to talk to you, and I love having the opportunity to work with you again here. And I look forward to seeing what comes next. So the exhibition is on view through April 15th. We will have things on the website and Instagram and all those things.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca.